Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Rotten Bananas podcast. I'm your host, Imran.
And I'm Sonam.
And today we're joined by a very special guest all the way from Toronto. We're here with Jesse Singh, a comedian and overall great person. So welcome to the podcast, Jesse.
Sick. Thank you guys for having me. Oh, appreciate it.
100%.
Yeah, it's so nice to have you on. You're our first male guest in a while, so it'll be fun to chat with you.
Oh, really? Sick. Oh, I'm glad I could, kind of, I was going to say be part of the patriarchy, but that's kind of fucking, that's opposite of what we want. My bad.
We don't want that, yeah. It's okay.
We'll do something with the patriarchy. Hopefully.
Yeah.
We'll work on it.
They can have their little portion.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Jesse, for sure. You're doing your first headlining Canadian tour coming up soon, which is super exciting. And we definitely want to get talking about a little bit more about your stand-up career and like you as a comic, like kind of back to young Jesse. Have you always been funny? Did you always know you were funny? How did
I mean, like,
out?
I think the similar part of my story is kind of like what a lot of other comics will say, whereas they kind of found that they were always like the funny kid in class or whatever the case may be. You know what I mean? Like I remember, but what was weird was like talking to people about the fact that growing up, I was a pretty introverted kid. Like I was pretty shy. And then humor was something that I became comfortable with after realizing it was, I think as I got older, I realized it was more of a defense mechanism. But as a kid, you don't really know that, I just knew that like humor was a way for me to like get people to like me or like kind of shape an identity for myself. So I was always the class clown. I was always getting into shit too. Like I was always in detention and stuff, but I was never the kid that the teachers hated. They just liked that I was funny, but I was also a shit disturber. So that was a lot of, but aside from that, like, yeah, man, like I think, humor in the beginning was a way for me to kind of navigate my relationships just like with other people, but even within my own household. I talk a lot about this in my stand-up and stuff like that as well, with like having an absence of my father around. My parents split when I was really young, but while he was in my life, like the relationship was always turbulent, and I didn't really know how to navigate that as a kid. So like my kind of safety net was trying to break the tension, right? Like make jokes, kind of make people laugh, and use that to kind of navigate the relationships, like I said. So that's kind of where that aspect of it started, where I found myself like really being drawn into the comedy side of things. So
that's super interesting. Because you're right, as a kid, you don't really realize where it comes from, but it's pretty deep.
Exactly. Yeah, and like talk more about, so that's more of your childhood, but talk more about like, going into high school, university, and like where you are now. Like how did you see the journey kind of unfold for you? Was it an easy path, or was it kind of like, did it fall into place, or you really have to really just be like, do so much to get here? Do you know what I mean? Because I know for some people it's kind of like, oh, I want to do something, and they can just literally keep going and it just happens. But for some people, I feel like it's more like you have to actively think about it every single day and like get there. You know what I'm trying to say?
No, totally.
Yeah. I mean, definitely. I don't even know if I'm really there yet. Like, what I want to be, obviously, with the whole comedy thing. But the way it started was like when I was in high school. I always, like I said, I was always like the kid that used humor as a means to make friends and like navigate my way through high school and stuff like that. But I also did a lot of like sketches and stuff on stage. So like, and I grew up I don't know if you guys are familiar with Toronto at all, but I grew up in a neighborhood called Jane and Finch, and I loved it. Like I loved my community where I grew up, but it was kind of seen as the rougher part of Toronto. But every kid and had like, you had to have some kind of identity about you, right? You either had to be an athlete that people respected. That way you were more popular, people knew you, so you were less inclined to find yourself into bullshit. Or you just had to be like, street involved. You had to be, and I never was any of that. Like I was never a guy that had the hard exterior. I wasn't the most popular kid and stuff like that. So humor was kind of my escape. And I even talked about this story several times before, but I remember growing up there and me walking home from school one day, and like a bunch of these guys were posted up after, like, waiting to rob us. But like it was like initiation type shit, right? It's like
Yeah.
older kids waiting for the younger kids on the block, and we were walking home, and I remember one of these guys brushed us, and he was kind of like, what is it, da da da, and then I got scared, but the guy behind them saw me and was like, "Yo, leave that kid alone. He's funny."
Yeah.
So right there, I realized like, yo, I could use this just for more than just like making jokes and stuff. And and I think a lot of my love for performing came from that. Came from like doing sketches on stage, being able to like break out of my shell a bit. And then over time, I started doing it more and more, and that's when a lot of my friends encouraged me to like go
Yeah.
the route.
Nice.
And I remember doing my first set at Absolute Comedy. It was like an amateur night. And the way you got on was the first Tuesday of every month, you had to do a call in. But you would literally have to call in, like, I remember calling in like almost 200 times between 10 a.m. to 10:30.
Wow.
The lines were always busy. So sometimes guys would have like three phones going
Yeah.
at the same time. And then you would have to call in to get a spot for the following month. And then I remember I did it, and I had a bunch of my friends out, and I crushed. I did really well.
Yeah.
And ever since then, I kind of just got bit. But like, I know it's kind of a long-winded answer, but to answer
It's
your
okay.
question, but to answer your question, I think I realized over time that I had to also shift my reasoning for doing stand-up. Because I think in the beginning, like I said, humor was a defense mechanism, as a way to shape an identity. But then over time, I had to like also accept the fact that this is something that I love doing, and that was the reason that like made me want to continue doing it.
Yeah.
So I think I'm at a point now where I just did it so often that I wasn't really looking for a goal at the end of it. In the beginning, you're kind of like, I want to do this festival, I want to get on this accolade, or I want to get this credit. And I've done a lot of those things. Like I've done Just for Laughs, I've been on CBC, and that stuff was cool. And in my mind, I always was yearning to do those things. But then when
Yeah.
I did it, I realized how artificial that shit really was.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not like it took my career to a different path. Like, no one really, I'm still struggling for fucking tickets. So also, if anyone's watching this, please buy tickets to the
shit.
show.
Yeah.
So
People don't go out enough and like do stuff.
yeah, definitely.
Like, go see a show.
So I think that like but yeah, I couldn't really pinpoint the moment in time for you where I went from performing into bars for three people to performing on like stages and theaters. I think I just didn't stop doing it. And I think anytime an art form or passion that people have, as soon as you get to a point where you're like, I'm just not gonna quit, um, opportunities start to rise on their own inevitably, because
Yes.
you get better at your craft the more you do it, and the more audience you reach, just because there's more people that are resonating with what you're talking about. So
Yeah, definitely. And I think what you're kind of mentioning about like the accolades or like doing the things that you always wanted to, but then you realized, oh, this isn't even like that big. But I think it's a bigger deal because it's like you did it. It's not even about the award or like the fucking being able to say like put it in your bio like, oh, I'm Just for Laughs. Like it's
yeah,
more of like how it made you feel inside. It's like your own timeline that you have in your mind. Like it's something for you to check off and like, to just feel good about yourself.
Totally.
yeah,
So I think that's like a big thing too of people who are trying to start something, especially if it's their passion. They get caught up in those things because I think they want to feel different. Like I did
yeah,
it now. I did it. What should I? But you're not gonna feel different. It's still the next day is still Tuesday.
Yeah.
yeah.
You still just gotta do it. So yeah.
Yeah,
That's
yo,
so-
stand up is a very humbling art form, man. Like I remember doing shows. The biggest show I ever did was at Danforth Music Hall, which was like 1,200 people, and I did the recording. It
Wow.
went super well. Things were sick. And that same week, I did a show in front of 15 people, and I bombed like terribly. So it's like, I don't think you can ever get like to a point where you just feel like I think once you get to the point where you're content about this is where I am, you also stop growing as an artist. I think there's always a little bit of you that wants to challenge yourself, but that's what keeps you in it. you know.
Mm.
And I will say
Like,
my biggest achievement up until this day was when I made it to my auntie's, like my mom's auntie group chat. That
yeah.
was, you know what I mean? Because
Wow.
the whole time she
Congratulations.
didn't think, she thought comedy was like whatever. She didn't think it was a real job. You know,
Yeah.
even though I have the youth work thing in the
Yep.
day, but she didn't think it was a real job and all of that. But then I did Omni News one time.
Ooh.
Yeah, yeah. It was like my Punjabi was so bad they did a voiceover over my voice. I swear to
Oh my
God,
god.
Same, brother.
if you watch the interview, the man's at like the lady that got me the interview was like, "Don't worry, you can speak English." The guy spoke Punjabi the whole time.
Oh, shit.
And I could pass, like my Punjabi could pass, but
Yeah.
you could tell I was born here, you know?
Yeah.
You're not trying to
So
be a
when you
lady.
watch the interview, it's just his voice over my answers.
Oh my god. Okay, we need to watch that after this.
It
That's
was
fun.
crazy.
That's so funny. Oh my god.
Oh,
But as soon as I did that, she like sent it to all her work friends and shit,
no.
and that's when I
That's
knew.
so
I'm like,
sweet.
yeah,
That's when you knew you're like, okay, my mom approves this. But kind
yeah.
of talk about that more because I think it's like for like especially growing up like as a Punjabi person, growing up in this country, it's like if you're not like the typical job, you're kind of really seen as like you didn't fucking
You're a
amount to
fuck up.
anything.
Yeah.
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 So it's like talk about how like was it like weird to tell them you're even gonna like do stand like when you first started like oh I'm going to do this show or would you just lie and be like oh I'm going out with my friends, you know what I mean? And
No,
then
I mean,
also I'm sorry on the opposite talk a
yeah.
little bit about how your friends supported you because I feel like for a lot of people their friends would clown on them and then they don't do anything and then they wait 50
So
years and they do it,
true.
you know what I mean? So like how was that like having support or not having support?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll touch on the friends part first. Like, I was always, I guess I was grateful to know in the beginning that I did have a lot of peers that were kind of supportive of the decision because they thought it was cool, you
Mhm.
know? And like I said, where I grew up, a lot of the opportunities that people had available to them, they felt were limited. So when you always saw people doing things kind of out of the box like this, it was almost supported because it's like, yo, this is someone from our neighborhood, you
Hmm.
know, that's trying to do something like that, which was cool. But one thing I will say is that I've realized now is you could tell how new a comic is just based off of how many of his friends and families come out to the show.
Yeah.
Because when it's your first time or first like couple times at a show, yo, everybody's pulling up. All your boys are there, your family's there. But then once you're like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or maybe even a month or two in, they're like, yeah, I don't want to hear the same shit again. You
Yeah.
know? It's kind of turns into more loneliness after that. But you know, and like the support just changes, and I get
Yeah.
it. Like this is my journey. I don't
Mm.
expect them to show up.
Yeah, definitely.
So, yeah, in that regard, I would say like I was always grateful to not really have people that were scaring me away from this path,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, friends wise,
Yeah.
family wise. I think like, you know, a lot of them, you know, my mom was obviously worried, but immigrant parents don't know how to show worry. They just show it as anger, you
Yeah.
know, sometimes. So, but I never once lied about it. Like
Yeah.
when I started comedy, I let them know this is what I'm doing. But it was wild the way I told them. I still remember this because I got caught from not from my mom. I got caught from my brother being high after smoking weed for the first time,
Yeah.
telling him I wanted to do stand up comedy. So it was fuck. It was just
Wait, what?
crazy night all in together because I was high as shit, and I remember coming home and I was like in my room, and
So
I
loud now.
I just thought in my head that they knew I was high. So they were sitting outside, and I kept walking in and out of the room, like looking. Like I would walk out of the room, I would look at them, and they would make eye contact with me, and then I would walk back in the room
What?
because I was paranoid.
Yeah.
I did it like 5 or 7 times, and by the fifth time, that's when my mom was like, "Yo, are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, I'm fine." And then I walked upstairs. I was in the kitchen. I was eating something. My brother comes upstairs and he was talking normally to me. He was like joking around. He's like, "Hey, man, you good?" I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, I'm good, man." He's like, "Yo, can I ask you something?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Yo, did you smoke weed?" But like he said it very casually, like as a
Yeah.
joke. And I'm like, "Yeah, I did." And that's when he flipped out because he's like, "Bro, you're high. You fuck? Like, yeah, me, you're acting stupid. Da, da, da.
Oh, that's so funny. Oh my
And
God.
and I kind of just thought, I'm like, yo, I'm already in the shit, so let me just tell him I want to do stand up. And then
That's
he,
fucking
He's
true.
basically just getting mad at you, yelling at you, and then you're just like, oh yeah, by the way, I'm gonna do that.
yeah, just
Actually a good way to
That's
do
pretty,
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
just blitzed out of my mind too. But
That's so funny.
yeah,
You
but
gotta go for it. That's so funny.
definitely. But I think in the beginning, like kind of the similar to any kind of story, when you have like, immigrant parents or even brown parents for that
Yeah.
matter, she wasn't necessarily, even now, it's not that she's not supportive of it, but she's kind of in a place where she's like, you know what, this kid's not gonna quit. Like I'm
Yeah.
not gonna keep telling him not to do it. But in the beginning, there was a lot of that. Like, this is not a real job, lokiki kege, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
What people say, and then all of those things, and then
Mm.
but I also understood beyond all of that, like where it was coming from,
Yeah.
right? It's not that it wasn't just about like the whole status thing or whatever. To her, it was like coming out of fear, right? Because this was like
Yes.
she was a single mother. When they came here, when they first came here, they were like dead broke, and then you had to leave your home
Hmm.
to start a life in a whole new other country. You have two kids. You don't really have much educational background. What's that
Did
bubble
you see
thing?
that? I don't know.
Yeah.
They
Oh, I
don't
thought we were giving
rest.
me a thumbs down.
I
Like,
know. Like,
bro,
no,
she
shut,
doesn't have an
Jesse, shut the
education.
fuck up. Stop. No, no, that was random. Anyway,
Yeah.
sorry, keep going.
But yeah, I was just saying like but yeah, that's where I also understood like a lot of that was just coming from a place of fear, right? Like she
Yes,
was just
definitely.
afraid for me. Like cuz they all they knew was survival. Like even till this day, like anytime I spend money on anything, it's always a stupid idea. Like this is a dumb idea, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're still coming from that mindset of like, yo, every dollar counts, even
Yeah.
though it's living okay, you
Yeah.
know? So,
No, definitely.
That doesn't just leave you.
Exactly. Yeah. And I totally like I feel like we can relate to you so much because even when we started like our podcast and like Rotten Banana Productions, all the things like we still don't like just we still lie about it. But
yeah.
like they know, but like they know we're recording with you right now. But it's also like we're never like they don't listen. Or, like don't like they're blocked. Like we're like don't be. This isn't a part of your life. But
Yeah.
it's like even though we're not doing anything wrong, we're doing good things. It's just that we're also brainwashed into being like, what's everyone gonna say? Like, oh,
Yeah.
it's so embarrassing. It's like it's really not though. Like it's just entertainment. It's just doing something fun online.
It's just doing something fun.
It's just exposing yourself. It's so vulnerable.
Yeah.
And that feels weird.
Totally, yeah.
You know?
So like props to you and like us too, like props to ourselves. And you have to take moments to like reflect because you're trying to like you were talking about the identity thing a little bit earlier, like you're trying to figure it out. And then it's like you're a comic now, you're a brown guy, like trying to whatever, maybe you don't have a lot of representation in that. And it's kind of weird. It's just tough.
Yeah.
It's like you have to like put the fear of them aside and your fear and just kind of like try to like
man.
hopefully it works out. And it's a big risk, so it's great to see you out there doing it.
And I'm not gonna lie, like one of the hardest things for me to get over in the beginning wasn't even so much of them like projecting that. It was more so getting over the feeling of guilt. Cause like there's also this expectation of like, being and I'm sure like, as a woman, you guys feel this too, but like as this expectation, like as being a son, I need to be like a provider for the family, right?
Yeah.
I need to be like a financial support as well, like things like that, and kind of carry the household. And there was always this feeling of guilt, like, am I being selfish and like trying to pursue something that I really want to happen, right? And not even for selfish reasons, because I obviously, if this were or when this pays off, right? Like I know that I'm gonna be there as a support system for those that I care about, But it's just that in the beginning stages, I'm not gonna be able to do that until I get to that point myself first. But I always had to battle with that as well. Like, am I being selfish for doing something that I truly care about or trying to pursue something that I care about? And I still have those moments, but I think it's like, the best way I could kind of put it is like recognizing that and not to sound in the ego way, but if you're given like a specific kind of talent, whether it be music, art, comedy, whatever it is, singing even, I think it's selfish for you not to express that
So
because
true.
because you don't know like someone out there that resonates with your story or like sees you
Yes.
and says like, yo, like that's sick, like I want to try this, and they might be like, the next big thing, or they might
No,
have.
literally.
Yeah,
That's how it
yeah,
works,
yeah,
That's
right?
I feel like the only reason where I'm like keep pushing on myself to like make content and do this, because I'm like, there's other girls just like us who are like looking at us to be like, oh, they're just like us and they're making content.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
like, because there is not enough representation for brown people online. There is, but there isn't like, we're not all the same. We're so
yeah,
different, and so many creators are similar. So I
yeah.
think it's like you're literally, it's selfish if you're not putting content out and like
honestly.
doing things because the people need to see it.
Yeah.
You know?
Legit.
Yeah.
Like, and speaking on that kind of like vulnerability and putting yourself out there, doing it your way, like this is a little bit of a sidestep, I guess. But in comedy and in stand up, and I know this is something like Imran and I feel, it's scary. Like, it's
Yeah.
scary. And it's like, I don't know, like we get anxiety going to shows. I know Imran does. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
And we told you this last time we filmed this podcast actually before. We didn't talk about that.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Fucking,
Boop.
Hey guys, everyone, we've already filmed this, but we didn't record. So if it seems like we know him, it's because we're basically besties now. But
Yeah.
Spot up. But yeah, talk a little bit about that, the heckler experience, and like the negative side to like, I don't know, when do you ever, does it ever like,
what's the dark side
Shit.
of comedy? Tell us the dark side.
yeah.
I kind of alluded to it like before, but like I think the reason why a lot of comedians, and I know it's like cliche to say, or it's kind of this stereotype that a lot of comedians are dealing with depression or some kind of mental health or anxiety and things like that. I'm super grateful that I'm in a better place now mentally where I was compared to before, but I think that also had a lot to do with like trying to, break some of those patterns for myself, and also like I said, like creating a new relationship with comedy. Whereas before it was a way to be, it was a means for me to shape my identity, and I was so reliant on that as being who I was that I didn't really have other layers to myself, and I didn't really connect with the other parts of myself because I was always scared to. So, but the darker parts of comedy usually come into play when you are faced, at least this is from what I saw, when a lot of comics are faced with real life situations that they don't really know how to process their feelings, and their immediate thought process or their immediate direction that their mind takes them is like, okay, how can I find light in this situation, or how can I make this into a joke and find the humor in it? And even though that sounds beautiful, I think what the detriment that comes with that is that you also don't really get to fully process what you're feeling. You don't get to fully process your anger or your grief or your loss or your mourning. And I think that's where a lot of the darker sides of comedy comes from, where people don't see. Like they might see a story or a joke about like, a comedian losing a best friend and they think it's funny, but like you also don't know what that comedian had to go through during
Yeah.
that whole time. And he might still be grieving.
Yeah.
It's like, imagine how hard it must be to grieve while trying to tell the story and make people laugh from the story,
Yeah.
And like they kind of they kind of transfer that energy into like what looks beautiful, what sounds beautiful, that you're trying to make jokes and humor out of the situation, but I think we also restrict ourselves from having the ability to feel it all the way through. But and then of course the career side of it, the business side of it is like a nightmare to navigate. Like I think that's why you see a lot of comics who are incredibly talented. Like I honestly, I'm not saying this out of a biased place. Like I'm saying this just based off of places where I've toured. I've gone to the States. I've done shows in New York. And like, yo, like comedy there is incredible. It's amazing. But Toronto has so much untapped talent. Canada within itself has so much untapped talent, so much unseen potential. Just because like the way we treat our artists, our independent artists, entertainers, it's very difficult to make a living here.
Yes.
So that's why you see a lot of comics that are struggling that are so good. Like they're like they should be way bigger than they are. But because they don't have
Mm.
the access to the exposure, the access to the media or the entertainment industry the way artists in the States do, it
Mm.
they also get very like overseen, overlooked, and they kind of get jaded, you know, and they go under the radar, and
Mm.
that's where it becomes real difficult. And I think that's definitely where like the harder days come in, where you're like, you know, you're like, yo, I love doing this, but how am I actually gonna make a living? You know?
No, that's real as
Yes,
fuck.
that's
Yeah.
so real.
Yeah, yeah.
But okay, you said it a couple times. They're like, there's so many good comedians. But what makes a bad comedian then?
Mm.
Like, what would you pinpoint of like this person isn't like oh they're not that good. Like, you know what I mean?
Damn, that's a good question. That's because I always talk about the opposite. I've never actually thought about what makes you shit. I guess okay. I don't want to like scapegoat this answer. I want to give you a real answer, but I
Yeah.
do like obviously like comedy is subjective, right? Like the stuff everyone will find funny, you might not find funny, I may not find it funny, right? Like
Yeah.
depending on what the type of humor is, and I'm very much aware of that. But me personally, I think it's not so much what a bad comedian is, but I think there's very common mistakes that you
Mm.
make as a comedian when you're first starting out. And a lot of them are trying to tackle topics that you're just not ready for yet. So like I've seen guys that come into the comedy game within like the first month or the first couple months or first few weeks even, they'll try to do like controversial material. They'll try to
Mm.
jump into like you know, stuff about religion or maybe even, you know, like yeah, like just more
Yeah.
edgy material. And the thing is, I also understand it from an art form that there's a place for that and like you have to be able to workshop your material. You need to be able to freely say what you want to say. I'm a huge advocate for that. I think as a comedian you should be allowed to say whatever you want on stage. However, that also doesn't excuse you from the consequences.
Mm.
So I think one of the things that is one of my biggest pet peeves and what I actually think is a bad trait for a comedian is when his first go-to is to blame the audience.
Mm.
Like if they're having a bad set or if they're bombing and they're like, yo, you guys are shit or you guys suck. And it's like,
Yeah.
no, brother, you suck. Like, you know what I mean? Like you were not funny. Like, but they're
That,
so fixated on this idea that like I need to break this whole PC culture or like go
Mhm.
against the grain type stuff where it's like
Yeah.
there's comedians that do that and they do it very well. They do it incredibly. Bill Burr is one of my favorite comedians who I think crosses that line like and tiptoes that line like incredibly. Patrice O'Neal's another great one who was able to find that balance. But to me, yeah, I guess like that's what a bad comic would be. Someone who just
Mm.
doesn't acknowledge that is just not self-aware
Yeah.
their own like material and like why it's not working. Their go-to is always like I need to blame the audience and it's like sometimes it's not the audience's fault. It is you.
Yeah.
You know, you got to
No, I
figure out.
hear you.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's kind of like it's like the career or like this work is entertaining other people. So if you're because you can't just get you have to be self-aware in yourself. You can't get mad at the people. They're just here to be entertained. They just gave the $20, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, it's not funny.
No, 100%. Yeah.
What are you gonna do?
Well,
But talk more about like okay, so you named just some stand-up comedians there. I don't personally don't know any. I'm sorry, except for like I know you and like you know Russell Peters. I don't know, but
Okay.
like when you were growing up before you got into stand-up, were you a fan of stand-up?
Huge.
Okay, so you
I
already like
love
knew things in the industry and all that.
not I wouldn't say from the
Like you knew
industry.
people.
Yeah, like famous people, like
Yeah.
celebrities. But
Mm.
what when I first started stand up, I had never seen a live show. Like I had never actually seen live stand up comedy before. So that was new to me. Like even the first time I ever performed, that was my first time ever going to a live show. Whatever stand up I watched.
You were your first time.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. like whatever stand up I watched was like on TV or like YouTube and stuff like that. And one of my biggest uh like I guess inspirations coming up was Dave Chappelle.
Mm,
But I would say like and I still think he's one of the greatest, but I think like for any comedian, this is like and not this is not to throw shade at him. I still think he's one of the best, but I think there comes a point in every stand-up comedian's career where they get so big and they get so famous, they're kind of just there to put out more consistent content. You know what I mean?
mm,
Whereas when he first started, he was very much groundbreaking. Like there was nothing seen like that with the Chappelle show and like what he was doing and the stuff that he was talking about, but like the way he was able to articulate it in such a way that was so smart yet so funny was like that was like yeah, I loved like watching that
yeah.
because I love seeing comedy that doesn't feel like someone is like talking at you.
Mm,
Like the way he would
mm,
tell his jokes was very conversational,
yeah.
and that was one of the things that like really drew me into it. But I think the moment where I felt this is possible for me was seeing someone like Russell Peters.
Mm,
Like I remember seeing his Comedy Central special, who to like any comedian, that's like a legendary moment in Canadian stand-up
yeah.
was
Okay.
yeah, because it was like so basically they used to have this thing on Comedy Central where they would like a Comedy Now special, which was like 20 to 30 minutes each comic would go up. And that was the first special where he was wearing like this white dress shirt, white Air Forces. And I remember watching it in the living room. My uncle was there, my mom was there, my auntie, we were all sitting watching it, and I saw them laughing. But like what was crazy to me was that they were laughing at an English speaking comedian who was also telling stories that I could have related to. So
Mm,
like, seeing that, I was like, yo, like that's crazy. Like I want to be able to do that. I want to be
mm,
that guy. So he was definitely, I think, like influential for me, and I'm sure
yeah.
for a lot of other brown comics.
Well, and
No.
that's what we were just saying earlier too, right? It's like how we have to do
Do
these
something
things. Like
different.
Russell Peters
Yeah.
could have quit, and then we would have had no representation.
Yeah, that would
Yeah.
be crazy. If
That
Russell
would have
Peters-
been crazy, right? So
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's like,
So true.
as much as people even want to shit on him or like whatever, he still did like
Mm,
pave the way, right? And you have to honor
totally.
that for
No,
sure.
100%.
And like, what a moment! Like, I feel like so many people could probably relate to that. Like, seeing your family laugh at something like that. Like,
Yeah.
wait, you guys
We
have a
laugh,
sense of humor?
period. Y'all
Yeah.
laugh.
Like, okay. So
Yeah.
that's amazing. Like, I love that.
Yeah, I mean, yo, that's a great point. Like, I didn't even think about that, but like what you just said, like if I didn't see him as someone who was a prime example of something I would have wanted to do, I wouldn't even have known it was possible, you
Yeah.
know? Like, yeah, like what you said, like imagine he didn't do it, you know?
Yeah, exactly. But so do you feel that in your life too now, like at your shows, do you feel like you see a lot of like brown kids coming or just like, brown people in general? Like what would you say your demographic is of your shows and stuff?
It's funny you asked that because I'm still kind of trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
But I think like we talked about this before too. It's like basically like people like you guys,
Mm-hmm.
like second generation Canadian, like you know what I mean. It is we're second generation, right? I always get that mixed up. I'm pretty sure first generation's like
I think
when.
No,
technically,
we're the first generation here.
yeah.
That's what I mean. So like, but wait, were you born here?
Like,
Yeah.
Yeah. So like,
but your
wouldn't you
parents
be
weren't.
second? So my parents would be first, wouldn't they?
But
'Cause
they're
they
not
came
born
here.
here.
But they were like the first ones in our family to be Canadian.
Technically true. But
Then,
yeah. Okay.
whatever the term is. Yeah.
Canadian
Basically,
born.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah. Canadian born, like brown kids are probably the ones that relate the most to me.
Yeah.
And surprisingly, like even in Toronto, a lot of like the Caribbean community too, but that's only because of where I grew up. Like,
Mm.
You're like actually from Toronto.
yeah,
Like,
like
Toronto.
there was a huge like Caribbean influence, and there was always like a huge diversity in my neighborhood where I grew up, but there wasn't like many Punjab. There wasn't like I remember in my school from elementary school to high school, there was only like a maximum of 4 to 5 Punjabi people in the school, like
Wow.
for each school. And in middle school and high school, it was me and the same kid for like both schools. But like even in that, I think I always felt this weird. I was always in this weird like limbo because I would do a lot of Desi shows. Like I would get booked to do a lot of Indian shows.
Yeah.
The thing was, a lot of the like the Desi shows I did, a lot of them were students from like back home or like
Yeah.
international students, and none of them really related to anything I was
Yeah.
talking about. And I kind of almost caught them off guard because when I would go up, they would say Jussie Singh, and I would be on stage, and they would get me. But it's like, yo, this guy doesn't really tell jokes in
Damn Canadian.
Punjabi.
I could have done it.
Yeah.
Guys, come on.
So it was like this weird internal, like, yo, this guy's not one of us, you know? So
Yeah.
I never really felt accepted.
Yeah.
But then it wasn't until I started to like share these stories or like do sets in front of like, like I said, like brown kids that were born here or children of immigrants,
Yeah.
they really felt that connection. Like
Yeah.
those are the guys that like really loved it and would like kind of be more drawn and resonate with what I was talking about because they kind of felt the same way, right? Like they
Yeah.
always felt like, yo, I'm not accepted by my own community because I'm never Indian enough. But
Yeah. So true.
so yeah.
That's yeah.
Yeah. That's a real feeling. Like you literally just grow up and you don't know like how to identify.
Yeah.
You think everybody else is so Punjabi or so Indian, but it's like, everybody's just doing it in their way, whatever type of situation. But no, we can be judgy as hell. So
Yeah, 100%, yeah.
Our people will be judgy. So
no, respect that. But I think it's interesting as you grow, like you get to represent kind of more people and more stories, and like even like the students, like maybe there will be those those moments where okay, now we're like relating to the student community even like because we are so different, but we have like obviously we have so many similarities as well. So it's like just telling your story and being out there is so powerful.
100%.
For sure.
Go ahead, Imran.
Okay, this is kind of a random question, but like, do you find like when you're not doing comedy, right? Do you have to like stop yourself from being funny? Like, do you find it hard to be serious? But like, I know you're workers, a youth worker, so of course that's like a serious job. But are there times where you're just like, want to make a joke out of everything?
Are your friends ever like just chill?
So like, Jesse, can we be serious? Like,
thankfully, I would say that I'm okay here. Okay. And that like it hasn't come to the point where it's like I have to necessarily stop myself from like trying not to be funny.
Yeah.
But there have been countless moments where I've said like very inappropriate shit like in the spur of the moment and then I look back and be like I probably shouldn't have said any of what I just said. Like, like making crazy jokes in front of HR and stuff. And like but I would never obviously like take it to the far extreme, but it was just stuff you wouldn't do,
Yeah.
And then so yeah, like in that sense, I think that has kind of like come up quite a lot, but thankfully it hasn't really gotten me in trouble.
Yeah.
Until this point.
Well, sorry, go ahead.
No, I think it's because like I do it in an innocent and playful way. Like I'm never doing it as a means to like talk shit about someone or put someone down. I'm kind of just making a fool of myself almost.
Yeah, like you definitely you have a mature vibe that I don't think you're doing it to like, oh, I'm gonna be funny, like a fucking like, like a like a tool bag. What are the freaking people say? I don't know insults. Like you know what I mean? Like you're just kind of doing it like make a joke and they're like, oh shit, like type of thing. I don't know. Yeah. Because it's kind of like when you speak in slang or like swear in front of your friends, then you gotta go home and like be proper, and it's so tough. Sometimes you just like want to like say fuck 10 times in front of your mom, and you can't like.
Yeah, you definitely got a code switch. Like that's the biggest
thing. That's so funny. Or like, so you work with a lot of youth. So do you ever want to just like make fun of the kids and stuff? Like, do you ever? Yeah.
Sometimes I do. Like sometimes and to be honest, that was one of the best ways for me to almost gain their respect actually. Cause and like for like so for those of you that don't know, I guess like I've also been a youth worker for like 10 years around the same time I've been doing stand up. And yeah, like humor's played a huge role in that cuz like you see a lot of wow, you really hated the youth work thing too, yo. Imran's really fucking
kids.
me right now. It's all good. But No, I was saying, yeah, like humor played a huge role in that too, especially because like I work with a lot of young people who have come from like various backgrounds and
Hmm.
trauma and probably have seen like some of the most come out of the most like heinous of situations, whether it be like emotional, physical, sexual abuse.
Hmm.
And sometimes like I think like the aspect that bringing humor into that line of work is not only to ease tension and break the ice, but it also kind of breaks that fourth wall, right? Because this young person is coming to you in a very vulnerable state.
Yeah.
They're seeing you as their support worker, as like, you know, a professional in the field, and there's power imbalance. You know, and I think like what making a joke and bringing humor into it does is it kind of like breaks that tension and it lets you know like yo like yeah I'm your worker but I'm also still just a person just like you know what I mean,
Yes.
but we can still have that human relationship.
Yeah.
And that's helped out a lot, but in terms of like the making fun of them piece, like a lot of that just came from what I realized over time. Like it's not like I come out of the gate just making fun of a kid.
Yeah.
After I've built like a pretty solid relationship with them, that's like one of the things that, you know, we were like, you know, even when we were in high school, like that was just a big thing, like it's just doing that banter back and forth.
Yeah.
And sometimes the youth will come in and they'll like, you know, they'll like, you know, they'll see me after a couple months and they're like, yo, dog, you're getting bolder every time I see you or something like that, right? And then
Yeah.
I would make a joke back or like I would like make fun of them back, but it was always a sign of respect. It's because like they have the comfortability to know that I'm not gonna
Yes.
get mad. And like if I say something that's funnier than them, it's almost like a sign of like, oh, this guy gets it. Like, you know?
No, definitely.
Wow.
Also, did you ever feel like you being a comedian was a barrier to like getting work, or like how do you feel like you have to tell people, or it's not a big deal?
Mm.
I think I'm grateful, and I've been in a privileged position too, in the sense that when I started stand up, I started it around the same time as the career I'm in with my agency. So
Okay.
I've been with the same organization for the same number of years, but I've just
Mm-hmm.
done several different work programs and several different workshops, and they knew. So like I was pretty transparent about it, and I also talked about like, you know, me being public on social media because I was worried about that, like
Yeah.
about I was posting certain content that was sensitive or like I was talking about certain subjects and topics that, you know, I was worried about like either youth finding it or other staff finding it. And then of course they kind of just said the same thing, like, you know, like that's your platform, that's like your creative platform. So it's not that you would be penalized for that, but as long
Mhm.
as you're not doing anything that is going to harm the general public, like or as long as I'm not breaking any confidentiality, like I'm
Yeah.
okay with that. Cause I know a lot of people always ask me like, yo, do you talk about work in your stand up?
Yeah.
And the thing is like, not really. Like I may have one or two jokes, but I don't dive too deep into it because I also want to respect the young people that I work with, right?
Yeah.
Like in the scenario that one of these guys were to come in and like watch a show of mine and I said something that like, you know, they know I'm talking about them. The audience may not know, but they will know.
Mm.
That's just like
That's
super
so weird.
yeah, it's very disrespectful to them as
Yes.
because this is someone that shared the most vulnerable parts of themselves and now I'm on stage like trying to poke fun at it
Yeah.
for my own game, you
Yeah.
know? But if it's like, but I'll play it by ear. Like if it's
Yeah.
something inconsequential, then obviously I'll share it. But in those moments, I'll try my best to like keep their privacy and like you know be respectful of that as well.
Mm.
But yeah, like I would never say that it posed a hindrance, like in terms of my work.
Nice.
But yeah, and like I said, I was grateful to be kind of like jumped all over the different programs. Like I worked in the drop-in center sector. I've worked in the shelter. I worked at a group home that was specifically for young women coming out of human trafficking, but I
Hmm.
was like
Wow.
one of the only males that worked in that program. And then recently, as of now, I work for the Family and Natural Supports program, which seeks to like help young people reintegrate back with their family or create those relationships again.
Hmm.
Nice.
That's so
Wow.
good.
You must.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Sorry. you must have a very fulfilling work life with like the balance of comedy and youth work and like, yeah, like that's super, like you're really connecting with people through your work.
Yeah, it's so good. And I feel like, I mean, we talked about this before too, but it's like this work is so important because, you know, youth are the next adults and we should teach them, and like they should be able to see, like, you know, POC in different positions.
Yes.
Because you don't see that often, right? So it's nice to just be able to see, like, oh, okay, this person is, I could be this person when I grow up, and now they're helping me. That's so nice.
Literally.
You know? So you really need that. So that's really good work. And it's, I mean, we talked about this last time as well, but we have our own organization where we, you know, provide support to women of color in our community. So it's like, it's so rewarding, you know? And it does, it's hard, but it feels good to be giving back to the community so much.
Totally. And like kind of along this line, I know you mentioned earlier like the dark side of comedy, and like, you know, it's a lot of, you're bringing light to darkness, and even with this work, you know, you're finding support when people are going through some of the toughest situations they're going to encounter in life. So how have you, like, is there anything that you've kind of learned or like integrated into your life to like help you process these things, help yourself take care of you, or like how do you like find that balance and make sure make sure you're not getting like too deep into it?
That's a huge, like that thing. But I think it's something I like. It's definitely something I'm still learning as I go, for sure, but I've gotten a lot better at, because I think for any person that is working in this kind of field, whether it be like some kind of self-help or youth advocacy or whatever the case is, like, you get really caught up in this mentality of like, yo, I need to quote unquote, I need to help these kids. And I don't like wording it like that, because I don't ever want to think that I'm above someone, or like, you know, I'm the one that's gonna save them. You know, I think a lot of people come in it with this weird savior mentality.
Yes.
But that's not at all like what I'm like, what my intentions would be, or what I would hope no one's intentions are. But sometimes you get caught up in the cycle where you need to, like, you feel as though you need to go above and beyond, which is beautiful. But I think one thing I also had to remind myself was that as much as these young people need support and guidance, they also are in a position in their life where I need to be able to respect their autonomy, which means that they have their ability to make their own choices and face their own consequences for those choices. So like, you know, and that was one of the things that I had to accept for myself, you know, is that I can give you the tools and I can show you the resources that are accessible to you, and I can help you in trying to like meet those resources and like get to that point, but I can't be the one to do everything for you. Like, you know, and that was the biggest life lesson I learned, which was the difference between enabling someone's behavior and actually empowering them. Because if I were to continuously like see this young person as helpless, like, I'm gonna burn myself out because I'm gonna feel the need to like make sure everything is catered for you. You know what I mean? I'm doing everything for you. I'm filling out your forms for you. I'm filling out your referral forms for you. I'm the one that's making sure that your appointments are all lined up, and you know, I'm staying on top of you to get to these things, which are all beautiful, and I can do that in the beginning, but I can't always be there. Like, you know, and I think that's one thing I had to keep reminding myself, is that I also have to give them a position to feel as though like they can have their own power back. They don't need to be dependent on other people to get things done. They don't have to feel like a victim. They don't have to always feel helpless. And it's very easy to do that, and it's also understandable because of all of the shit that they may have endured. But you know, and I think it's normal. It's human nature. When you see someone that needs help, your first instinct is to help them. But at some point, you also have to take a step back and be like, okay, what is this person capable of that I'm not letting them do on their own? I'm not letting them take responsibility. So,
very wise.
no, I hope that made. I don't know. I feel like I talk too much, but
No,
You're good.
no. I mean, it's a talking podcast, so
yeah.
what are you gonna do, right?
You're literally our guest.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
No, That's super wise, and I think that's something we also kind of have come to learn. But in so many ways, and I think in all relationships in life, you kind of just have to like accept everybody and let everybody do their thing and figure it out on their own, because we're all capable, and we're just trying to figure it out for real.
So true. Yeah. Talk a little bit. Well, before we knew you kind of mentioned a little bit about you have your own nonprofit as well.
Yeah.
Creating Consciousness. So can you talk a little bit about like what that is and how that kind of aligns with the work you already do?
For sure. It's actually like a workshop and like a program that I created, which basically encompasses different forms of CBT, like cognitive behavioral therapy and art therapy. And it looks to like have different activities that I do with young people to help them like tap into more of their creative potential, but also use different creative means to understand their emotions better and like learn how to express those emotions better. Because a lot of the time when we're experiencing like, heavier emotions like, anger, guilt, sadness, fear, even, we're accustomed to reacting in like a more impulsive way, right? And the purpose of the program is when we're overwhelmed with those feelings, like how can we do things to help us bring us back to like a more baseline space so that when we are responding to a situation, it's from a more conscious state of mind. We're not just like impulsively acting on it. Um, and like an example I can give is like one of the activities we talk about is actually humor. So like, we'll look at the feeling of fear, for instance, and then I show everyone like a small little stand-up comedy clip. And then
you?
No, it's like a separate one. I might do mine though, like probably, but yeah, I show a quick stand-up comedy clip, and then I talk about like the story that the comic is talking about, and like what they may have felt during the actual storytelling, because they were genuinely afraid of the scenario, but now they're taking the same scenario and they're looking back at it and they're making light out of it, right? And they're finding the humor that's in it because they realize how irrational that fear really was. So then, and then I get everyone to take a second to kind of think about a moment in their time that they were afraid of something where now they look back at it and they're like, yo, I can't believe I was even afraid of that. And try to like,
I really like that.
And try to make like a joke out of it, So
that's
but like
I'm gonna use that for one of our workshops.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, feel free, yo. But yeah, so like that's kind of the one of the aspects of it, because like I like to look at the element of sometimes our creativity can work against us or it can work for us, like our imagination. So the same way we can use our imagination to create things that are beautiful, that same imagination can be the thing that's causing us to hold ourselves back.
Yes.
Creating all these fearful scenarios that don't exist yet.
So true.
So true. It's like, it's literally the most beautiful thing of life to imagine whatever you want. And it's the most terrifying because you can imagine whatever you want. And it's fucking weird.
Yeah.
So I really like that. That's really cool. So these workshops, so is it like a series of workshop or it's a one-time thing and then you host them like, it's like a random thing?
Yeah. And how can, if somebody was interested, like how do you have to be referred or like how do you access it?
I mean, the best way to access it is they can like send me a DM on Instagram. I also have an Instagram page that's dedicated for the workshop called Creating Consciousness 905.
Awesome.
And then they can also find the email to the link in that bio for that Instagram, but they can also find it in my regular bio as well. So that's kind of the best way to get in touch with me is to send me a DM, send me an email, and then we can kind of coordinate things from there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's in terms of like the series of workshop right now, it is just the one workshop, but my goal is to also add in like little workbooks so that when the workshop is done, you can have something to take home with you, like a little workshop, so you can have, something more physical to look back at, kind of go through the activities we did, but also have like activities you can do on your own time.
Cool. That sounds
super
great.
Cool. Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome. And how about you just tell us a little bit more about your upcoming tour and like a little bit about what can we expect?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure, yo. I mean, we're doing about I think it was nine, if I'm not mistaken, 19 different cities,
Whoa.
5 different provinces. Our first week is gonna be in Edmonton. So I'm not sure depending on when this airs, but September the week of September 6th is or sorry, it's the week of September 3rd is when we're gonna be in Edmonton.
Mm-hmm.
And our first show self-produced show because I'm doing smaller shows leading up to it, but my first self-produced show is going to be on September 6th at in Edmonton at the Grindstone Theater. September 7th is going to be in Calgary at Vern's Pub. And then we're hitting up Vancouver, obviously the week after. So if anyone's in Vancouver, they can check out the show on September 13th at Chilex Studios. I have Ryan Williams and Quasi Thomas, who are local Vancouver comedians that are going to be on the show as well. They're going to be hosting and featuring the night, but they've also been, on everything that you could think of. CBC, Just for Laughs, Winnipeg Comedy Festival,
Cool.
all of the above. But yeah, like in terms of what they can expect, this is my first headlining tour, so I'm going to be headlining all of the shows, and it's going to be me like workshopping a lot of the material that I've refined over the years, but also trying to workshop some new stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, they can kind of get a sneak peek of that. So
Awesome.
I know, I'm excited.
Yeah, we really are.
Yeah, I honestly get so nervous at comedy shows because I hate being like addressed. So I'll be sitting in the back, but I'm excited to see you perform. I think it'll be really fun. And yeah.
We will be there. You might not see us, but we'll be there.
that's sick. Thank you
I'm
guys.
wearing a mask, hiding in the back. Don't make a joke about the not recording the podcast first time, okay?
Nah, I've already trying to write one, but
I will literally leave. I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, who the fuck were those girls?
Waffling in the back.
Literally, you just see me crawling out. I was like, but Jesse, it was so nice to talk to you, and thanks for coming on to our podcast. It's it's good to get to know you, and we're looking forward to meeting you when you come here next week.
Totally.
Yeah. So why don't you kind of give everyone your socials? Like, where can people find you, and where can people get tickets for the show?
Yeah. You can find me on Instagram and TikTok. Both of them are the same handle. It's at the Punjabi Timbit. But you gotta put the in the front. I don't know why. THE. But yeah, they can find links to the ticket. I'm sorry, they can find the ticket link in my bio, or they can just go on Google, type in Baby Goat Comedy Tour, and it should pop up on Eventbrite, Baby Goat Comedy Tour Vancouver, and they'll see it pop up. But the easiest way is just to click on the link in my bio, and they'll see all the list of dates, and they'll find Vancouver on there.
Okay, that's perfect.
Nice.
Talk a little bit about why is your Instagram handle the Punjabi Timbit? I just need to know.
To be honest, like, it was just a name that I used after I cut my hair because everyone's like, yo, your head looks like a Timbit.
Yeah.
But then also over time, it kind of just stuck because like it's like the Indian Canadian fusion thing. You know what I mean? So I kind of put it together. I'm still kind of worried though, because if this shit does blow up, then I don't know if I'm gonna get like sued for copyright infringement, but I'm pretty sure.
Oh shit! You should look into that.
Or they can sponsor me.
Change the spelling, put 2 I's or something. I don't know. They should sponsor you. That'd be so fun.
It's a good collab opportunity.
I don't know if it might be kind of nasty to eat a masala timbit though. You know what I mean?
No, John infused.
Oh, that would be fire.
Cardamom or something.
Yeah, a little.
Hook me up on the deal.
Yeah, that's
a little 10% right there. Yeah,
that's fire. Timbit is
right. Gulab jamun timbits.
Oh my god, get out of here!
So good. That would be so good.
Oh my god. Okay, keep all this. We'll cut this next time.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Jesse.
Thank you so much.
Great talking.
Thank you guys, man.
Bye.
Bye.